Hi everyone, welcome to this BookTrust webinar on reading and wellbeing. And we're absolutely delighted to welcome the wonderful rapper and education consultant and indeed author now, MC Grammar. I'm just going to hold this. You can't see it now because I've got a weird background. There we go. Author. And the amazing Deputy Principal and teacher, Kiran Satti. And then the fabulous author, there we go, I've done that better this time, and children's therapist, Becky Goddard-Hill. So we're going to discuss the wellbeing benefits of reading for children. So I've just got a couple of housekeeping points, I believe. There we go. So we will be recording this and we will share a link to the recording. We will share the chat as well. And very importantly, we will share the slides from the research as well. So this will come early next week. So you will get that email then. So don't worry, everything will be shared with you. Please do put any questions in the chat box if you have any questions as we go along, and we'll try to answer them. But yes, welcome everybody. And now I'm going to hand, I think, over to MC Grammar, please. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful webinar. We're very excited about sharing the research, all of your lovely comments. We're excited for the Q&A and, of course, finding out more about the BookTrust and all the magic that they do. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today. Dr. Fiona Barclay is in the house, and she'll be introducing us to her research on the well-being benefits of reading. And I can't wait to hear this. Over to you, Fiona.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So today I'm going to talk about some of the findings from our most recent research here at BookTrust, our briefing on the well-being benefits of reading for children. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the briefing is in collaboration with Place to Be, which is a leading children's mental health charity with over 30 years experience working in schools here in the UK. As Rachel mentioned earlier, the slides will be shared later, and you can click on each report, or the links are hyperlinked on this slide. So this is part of a series of research briefings we've done in the early years. They're all listed here. So just a quick, so before we go any further, let's take a moment to briefly talk about what we actually mean when we say well-being, because it's one of those words that we hear all the time, especially in recent years. But it's important to note that it's much more than being happy. It involves lots of different aspects of life, from like building strong relationships to having a sense of purpose and opportunities for personal growth. And all these factors shape how children grow, learn, and navigate the world. So, next slide, please. So with this understanding of well-being in mind, we can now explore the role of reading, and particularly shared reading, in supporting it. So research highlights 4 key ways in which shared reading benefits children. So it helps children overcome disadvantage, both in academic achievement and future success. It supports mental well-being, as well as fostering social skills and strong relationships. It supports early outcomes, such as speech and language development, and later contributing to better performance across the school curriculum. And it also helps develop imagination, empathy, and creativity. So as you can see, 2 of these key areas are directly connected to children's well-being. Next slide, please. So we've just looked at the broader ways in which reading supports children, but what does the research say specifically about the link between reading and well-being? So there's compelling evidence showing that children and young people who enjoy reading report higher levels of mental well-being compared to those who do not. And in fact, engaged readers are 3 times more likely to experience higher mental well-being than those who are least engaged. And reading from an early age sets children up for better mental health as they grow into adolescence and beyond. So what's really clear from the evidence is that fostering a love of reading early on can have lasting positive effects on children's mental health and overall well-being as they grow older. Next slide, please. So what are the different well-being benefits? So just like well-being is multifaceted, the benefit it brings is too. So in this visual we've put together, we can see how these benefits unfold both within children themselves and in their relationships with others. So in green to the left, we can see the internal benefits, those relating to the self. For example, observing characters' choices and their actions can help children develop self-regulation. On the right-hand side, in the blue, we can see the external benefits. So for instance, sharing books can foster connection and lower stress. So what's important to note here is that these internal and external benefits aren't separated, but they're connecting. Reading helps children build their inner world, and this in turn has a ripple effect and shapes how they engage and interact with the world around them. So for example, if we take self-awareness, so when children identify with characters in the books, they often begin to recognize and understand their own emotions more clearly. This internal process, developing emotional insight, can then translate into increased empathy and stronger social skills. So when a child understands how a character feels in a difficult moment, with guidance and support, it can also enable them to relate better to others in real life, which leads us to our next slide. So the evidence also highlights the crucial role that teachers play in maximizing these well-being benefits. So one key aspect of this is guiding and supporting children in their book choices, helping them explore the diverse range of literature that there's available. So the table here shows some of the different well-being benefits that can come from the different genres. So for example, if we have a look at comedy, we can see that this provides laughter, enjoyment, and a moment of relaxation. But then if we take, for example, nonfiction, we can see that the benefits it provides are very different. It provides intellectual stimulation. It's an opportunity to explore different interests. So I think that what's interesting here is that this table is a great example of how reading isn't just a skill to be learned or a way to unwind, which is maybe what we commonly associate reading with, but it's a very rich and layered experience that touches on so many different parts of children's development and supports their emotional, social, and cognitive well-being, as we have seen throughout today's short presentation. Next slide, please. And yeah, well, thank you for listening. Just to repeat again that the slides will be shared at the end of the presentation for your reference. And all the references of the studies mentioned are included in the footnotes of each slide. And additionally, there's lots of more detailed information in our briefing, including top tips for using books and stories to support well-being, as well as specific book recommendations. And there's also a piece by Place to Be that presents the ways in which books and stories have supported their therapeutic work in schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. So helpful and also very insightful. Key points for me that come from that initially is the fact how a broad reading diet is essential to create that rounded individual to really get the best of books and the best out of it. And I think that leads me on to my second point about how important the adult's role is, or the teacher, in facilitating that reading diet, but also being there to encourage these different books. And I think that's why we really need to have these reading specialists, these webinars like this, where we can connect together to actually understand and become experts in this field, because it's not just about picking up a book and reading it. And also this notion that books are often in the press, whenever I do interviews, they talk about bedtime stories, when actually I think those two words, bedtime and story, shouldn't always be linked together. Stories are all the time, and books are more than just stories. Like you say, it's exploration, it's non-fiction, it's fiction, but also about reading their way, which works for them. And I think it just shows how important we are as practitioners and educators in this role to facilitate this lifelong habit that's going to dramatically and significantly impact their lives positively. And that significant change is what it's all about. So thank you for that research and bringing it to light, and having those slides shared, I think, is very important, so we can actually reflect on it and then continue to build these lifelong readers who will have fulfilled lives from this simple habit that's all around us, that we can take us anywhere. So thank you so much. Speaking of habit and reading, it's now time for our panel discussion with Becky Goddard-Hill and Kiran Satti. So I'm going to be leading the topics, and this is how essentially it's going to work. I'm just going to open it up, introduce a topic, maybe ask some questions about it, and then hopefully we can hear from our panel further insight. And then if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat and we'll try and get at those as well. So if not today, all of them, hopefully through the BookTrust outreach program as well. So introducing Becky. and Kiran to the discussion. We're talking about the internal well-being benefits, and I would like to kick it off by saying, how important is this topic now with regards to what the situation is in school at the moment regarding children's well-being? Kiran, would you like to kick us off here?
Yeah, I think I would sort of frame it around the fact that childhood is very different to how it was 5 years, how it was 10 years ago. And I think we need to be sort of responsive to what children's lives are and their lived experiences at this point in time. And that's going to be something that links really well with reading for pleasure, in the sense of, like, if you're developing relationships with children and understanding their lived experiences, they'll have a better understanding of volitional reading, because you'll have a better understanding of them and what choices they want to make. So in terms of mental health and well-being for children, I think you need to frame it around the fact that childhood is very different. Like, screen time, there's a lot more of it in terms of, like, the way that they get their dopamine hit, so physiologically and biologically, the impact on them there. And I think that's why, like, the research that Fiona's just shared is brilliant. And I think it's probably what many teachers know in terms of why reading is so important, and that sort of holding that space to slow it down, to share that. Like, I always think of Maslow's hierarchy whenever I think of reading aloud or reading to children, because it's that physiological and that sense of belonging that are all there on that hierarchy, which is it's a human element of why you're reading. So I don't think they necessarily have that as much as potentially decades ago they did. But again, you've got to look at the context, you've got to look at safeguarding contextual risks as well. Like, children's lives are very different in the pockets of, just say where I am in Birmingham, they're very different lived experiences. So I don't think it's something we can generalise in terms of children's mental health and well-being. I think we need to frame it in the fact that childhood is very different. The way that timetabling is and the way that the curriculum to a certain degree is still written and assessed, it's harkening back to Victorian times, and childhood it's a very different concept now. So I think it's important you frame it that way. In terms of the well-being benefits of reading, we link it in terms of our behaviour and the way that we respond to children's behaviours as well. So my current setting, we are trauma informed. So everything that is rooted in our behaviour policies and our inclusion policies about being trauma informed. And we know that there are children that don't necessarily have that accessibility to books as well. So we've gifted books for free on our school gates, and they've gone like in 10 minutes of them being put on the school gate. We do a lot of reading for pleasure workshops, and the caveat being that this is to enable families to understand the importance of shared reading, to understand that importance of that time that you have with your children, because it's very easy to just give them an iPad and that will keep them occupied, but actually they need that physical connection, they need that time with you just to share with you. And it might not be reading, it might just be going through the books. So I don't know whether I share it now about our bambinos and books or idea, Rachel, or I just leave that for later. But I think when it comes, leave it for later. Yeah. But I think when it comes to mental health and well-being, I think we need to meet the children where they are, and you need to have a good understanding of where they are in terms of their lived experiences, because that will be different depending on where you are and who you're serving.
I think it's a great point, Kieran, about really knowing the children, knowing your audience, because every context is so different, and that's what great practitioners do when they really understand the children in their classroom. And it's about, switching that pitch to make sure that you click instantly with them, and context is key for that. Becky, do you have any thoughts on any insight on that as well?
Absolutely. Well, we know that the mental health crisis is very real. 1 in 6 children now, rather than 1 in 9 5 years ago, are understood to have a probable mental health condition, and that half of all mental health issues start in childhood, So we need to get in there and really support their well-being when they're young. As Kiran said, the world is very, very different. Parents are distracted by technology as much as kids are. So anything that brings that connection back together in quality time is really, really important. There's some research at the University of Sussex a couple of years ago that showed that reading brings cortisol levels, stress levels down by 68% after just 20 minutes, which is amazing. We have a generation of very stressed out kids because of COVID, for example. A couple of years of development and socializing got missed. So things that they would have learnt step by step, they're suddenly in school when perhaps they barely socialized when they were young, These kids are stressed. They're also getting dopamine hits all the time from screen time. We need to bring their stress levels down and help them relax. And reading is a uniquely portable magic. It's a wonderful quote, and it's absolutely true. It takes you somewhere else. If you dwell on your problems, often they will swell. Reading allows that escape, as well as informing, educating, and entertaining. And it is a really good way to help a child, busy brain, calm down.
I think it's really important in terms of that trauma-informed response as well to behaviour. So we have dysregulated children in our school that we are, like I'm sure everywhere we do. And for some of them who aren't necessarily great readers, the library space is one of their safe spaces because they know when they go there, everything has slowed down for them. Some of them take their ear defenders off, some of them sort of stop with their fidget toys and things like that. And they tend to pick up the same book over and over again, which is it's a positive in one sense, because that's their safe space. And it might just be them looking through the pictures, and then they get down to a level, like you're saying, Becky, where you can then have that restorative conversation with them. It's almost like a bridging mechanism sometimes as well.
I'm really loving those points, and also Becky, I'm loving the way you rhyme the dwell and the swell there. You could be a rapper quite easily. Just putting it out there. A possible collab after this. I'm just looking at some of the topic points here. So with importance of self-regulation, comfort, and mental stimulation. You talked about that there, how that naturally occurs, and Kiran, you mentioned that as well. When you're sitting together, you're supporting each other. That whole, I did not know the research about the cortisol levels dropping. That's just that's fascinating.
Amazing.
But the more you think about the process of reading together, you sort of really can understand that straight away. I mean, I know with my personally, with the kids in my class, but also with my children when we read at night, even when I've got my son who's trying to jump off the bed, he's 2. As soon as I get a book out, suddenly he doesn't want to jump off the bed. He's sitting down, he's into it. He wants another one, another one, another one. You can just see his whole mood of behavior patterns just shift. And the real catalyst there is nothing to do with me. It's just I'm picking up the books that he wants to be reading in. But actually, I think it's the association with what's happening with that book. It's togetherness, it's that intimacy, it's that trust, it's that close space that you do things together. So yeah, I think it's excellent that you mentioned that research, and the fact that the research backs it now.
Yes.
Another great support here for what we're trying to do across the BookTrust, and you know, as humans, just trying to get people reading, because we know actually it's probably one of the best cures out there for all that's going on with our young children, but also our adults as well. So
Well, it's interesting because often we'll suggest people do yoga or gardening or something like that in order to calm down. But when you're doing that, you can still be fretting about your problems, right? But words in a book interfere with that. They take you to another place, to another story, and they let your emotional brain just calm down because you're not dwelling on your stuff, and it gives you a break. And in this world, we all need a break from connectivity and worries and stress, don't we, in order to calm down. We think a lot more clearly when we're calm and make better choices when we're calm, which is why, as Kiran said, that reading area really works, and then you can have those conversations. They've had a break.
just got something in the chat saying, where can we get that research for the cortisol levels? How do we discover that? Where do we find that?
I will send the link through to BookTrust afterwards so it can be sent out with the slides.
Perfect. There you go. Another point here, how can teachers help with this support in this internal wellbeing benefits? Like, for example, suggesting books that people will enjoy based on interest. What are your, say, top tips that we can, not a quick fix, but something that we can get going tomorrow to really kick off these reading habits and get these kids reading?
Get to know the children. Like, I think more than anything, you need to understand the children in front of you. As a deputy, there are certain children that will come to my office because they'll know that there's certain books in my office that they want to read. And I know that because I've went out, I've spoken to them, I've talked to their families, and I'm very specific about, oh, I've got this comic book in my office at some point this week, come in and have a look at it. I don't like read books about cars, but there's one about a Lamborghini because I know there's a boy in year 5 who's probably going to need it at some point. There isn't a quick fix when it comes to developing relationships, and when it comes to reading and making sure those benefits are there for children. You have to get to know the families and the children.
And if there is no budget in the school for new books, if they're struggling because schools are underserviced, we know they are, there's not much of a budget out there. If we want to get kids reading, do you have recommendations, any resources online, anything like audiobooks, anything that's available now to really support these children to get it moving?
Well, Collins, for example, have Book Squad, which is fabulous, and it's full of recommendations for books, but also resources that can be downloaded and used with kids that have been made by their authors and illustrators, and they're all free. So that's a really great place to go. That's on collins.co.uk. And of course, libraries. encourage the libraries to come in and talk to the kids about what a fabulous free resource it is. Really nice place to go with their family, and the books are free, and there's every kind of book, audiobook, graphic novels, comics, all sorts they can just borrow. We need to really promote our libraries.
Yeah, I'd also just like to highlight there is a lot to offer from the BookTrust. I know they have books and lists for reluctant readers, stuff around emotional literacy and so on. So all of this will be supported through the post conversation. We'll be sending all this stuff out. I just want to touch on the library. You know, it's one of my kids' favorite things to do. I mean, I liken it to like taking them to a festival. It's one of the only places I can let them go free. You know what I mean? Like, so it's
you don't have to be quiet anymore in a library. It's not like when I was young.
Yeah.
Now it's like, just enjoy yourself. I talked to 450 kids at Manchester Library in one day a few weeks ago, and we were shouting out affirmations, doing Tai Chi. They put on great workshops, and often they're free.
Yeah, I mean, I did a workshop in Sandwell's Libraries, which is near you, Kiran, I believe, West Brom.
Yeah.
And we had the whole upstage. They built a stage.
Why weren't you in Birmingham?
Oh, this wasn't organised. Well, I'll be coming to Birmingham soon, for sure. But I mean, we had a whole PA system. We were wrapping books. They were jumping up and down.
Fabulous.
I think we did the old school garage music in there as well. And they were saying, Augie, in a library, it just shows you how the climate has changed. People understand that children need to get hooked on books, and we're doing all we can. So, yeah, the reason why I say that about my children, I just know on a Saturday when I go there and say, go, and they just they just run off and they just find books, and I find them in the corners reading. I find my kid on the searching for books on the computers in there and so on. So I really do think it's one of those underrated free things that are just out there that people just sleep on often, because you know, libraries are assumed to be these quiet places where people go to study, when actually the climate has shifted massively. And I think your local library will be very grateful if you start sending kids there and you start visiting there a lot more often. So okay, let's move on to topic number 2 now, which is all about the external wellbeing benefits. And how this benefits the classroom or school with regards to, like, for example, more empathy and stronger social skills. Do you mind kicking this one off, Becky?
So I think one of the most important things about reading in terms of relationships is that you will see people represented in books that are not like you, and you will learn to care about that character. You'll see what they're going through, and that helps you a great deal when you then relate to other children in your class. So it can make people kinder. I've just had a book included in the Reading for Empathy collection, and the whole purpose of that collection, it's just come out, is to encourage kids to empathize, care, and try and understand each other. Books are wonderful at doing that, because you're seeing somebody's experience unlike your own, but you get invested.
Yeah, I love that point. I mean, and it's also seeing characters that you wouldn't usually expect to do that role. Like, for example, in my book, one of the characters is a young girl called SF, and she wears a hijab. And one of the things we wanted to make sure is that, you know, that she was just as musical as everyone else in the book, because you might perceive that she might have been limited, for example, and it's not something you often see. But actually, why can't she beatbox, for example?
Yeah,
And she
challenges those stereotypes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So challenging those stereotypes to create kinder kids, to create more accepting children, to make an inclusive society. So 100%, I think that's such a good lesson to learn from that. And Kiran, anything to add on that topic?
Yeah, so across the year, so we work with the Empathy Lab quite a bit, and yes, we reviewed the embargoed books before they came out, and we looked at refugees, but every half term we have a question. It's an exploratory question linked to the protected characteristics, because as you say, the children aren't necessarily always going to meet certain people or protected characteristic lived experiences. So we've looked at race, and that was a choice to start with race based on the riots that had happened last summer. Because of our diverse makeup of families, it was really important we had a response to that, to make sure that they understood that they belonged. Then we looked at disabilities, and we've got books written in Braille, so we don't have any blind children in the school, but actually just having that accessibility to a certain type of lived experience and seeing certain images of disabled children, and not necessarily, and we don't say disabled, we say differently abled, because that's really important, that we don't stereotype them to be lesser than any other human. So we've got lots of images as well, so picture books with specific images. We've looked at Women's Month, obviously, this month, so we've looked at what is it like to be a girl, but we've looked at Strong is the New Pretty as like the themed book for that one for Empathy Reads. And last half term, when it was the reviews that schools were asked to do, so Woodview, the school that I'm at, we did a review on We Are Here, and it's the refugee experience. And I think what's really powerful about stories and books, from what you've said as well, Becky, is the fact that wherever you are, you always have to check your privilege, because when it comes to any type of protected characteristic, you have to check your privilege as well, dependent on where you are and your experiences. But it was amazing to hear the children's reflections on the lived experiences of the children in the story. And the one thing all of them picked up in the book was the kindness element, that even though they were going through like the worst part of the story, the little boy in the blue coat still shared the chocolate with the other girl who they'd never met before. And I think children are really attuned to that. Children are really in tune to that understanding of what it means to be a good human. And I think books like that just almost open up that opportunity for them to share that quality that they have within them and share it with others as well. So yeah, we do empathy reads throughout the year, and we base it around either contextual safeguarding risk, but also linking it in with, so in the next few months we'll do Father's Day breakfast, but within that we'll do an empathy reads based on what is it like to be a boy in this world, and sort of touch on toxic masculinity, sort of touch on certain elements of the fact that it is hard to be a boy now, because what does that actually mean? And we're doing a leadership project as well. So it's, I think, with empathy and things like that, don't ever be tokenistic. You've got to have it ingrained within some sort of culture within your school. So we were talking about the Building on Barbie project that I did last week as well. And that was a direct response to contextual safeguarding risks around our school, but it linked in with our Her stories as well that we're sharing. So it's never tokenistic. There's always something embedded within that. So it's not just a flyaway thing that you do every year. It's part of the community. It's part of developing their character and part of understanding themselves in the community around them.
Wow, there it is. And Becky, do you want to add anything to that before we move on to the next topic?
I think it's quite important that when kids see themselves represented in a book, not necessarily in terms of their characteristics, but in terms of their emotions,
Yeah.
they have some self-empathy too. They start to think, oh, it's okay, I'm not alone with this, I'm not weird because I think like that, that this is a shared human emotion and a quality, and it's okay, and that it'll pass, and that things will get better if you do certain things, or if you take care of yourself in a certain way. And they see things lived out, and that makes them feel a lot less isolated. And that's very, very important, because they can often not understand themselves, they can often not be kind to themselves. But when they see another character going through something similar, even if it's just an emotional thing, it makes them feel less alone. And it does teach them through that character's journey things they can do to make things better. And ultimately, I believe from a therapeutic point of view, it's always best to teach kids how to take care of themselves, to ask for the help they need, to self-soothe, to reach out for support. And if they can see a character doing that, they tend to be kinder to themselves too, and that's just as important.
I think now more than ever, Becky, that is an essential thing to have in all primary schools and all schools across the country. You know, we know the heat that the program on Netflix, Adolescence, is getting at the moment, and we're seeing the product of this neglect over the years.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is never the children's fault, these outcomes. There is the input that needs to be looked at. You know, for example, you know, I have it in my genre of rap music. People don't like the lyrics that traditional rappers talk about. I always say to them that that's their reality, right? That's what they talk about, what's around them. That's their environment. They live in gangs, they live around drugs, right? If you want to
Yeah.
change those lyrics, which is the output, someone needs to look at the input, which is their youth clubs, their schools, their educations, their role models. But better yet, every kid by law has to go to primary school. They have to,
Yeah.
right? So they're going to be there. So we can change this altogether very simply by just making sure that the curriculum, which is a different seminar right now and different talk, is, you know, suitable, but also the books that they are given have these
Yeah.
shifts. Because if we all agree on this spine of books, this empathetic books, you know, these books about characters and diversity, inclusivity, knowing your audience, then the world, you know, it's not going to be a fluke. It will be a better place, and it all starts beautifully with a book, right? And the words that are written on a page. So, thank you for your additions to that part there. I think it really hits home how important it is to make these seismic changes right now, here and now, because we're not starting to see the significant impact of the neglect over the years of what's happened and how the system doesn't really support that. Just looking at the chat, everyone's loving exactly everything you're all saying. So well done. This is fantastic. Everyone seems very, very inspired. And there are lots of links going in there from the BookTrust you can see here for virtual author visits. You've got lots of resources and books as well. So please keep an eye on the chat as well, because this will be emailed to you as well. But if you want to create a reading list as you go along, that's great. There's also some wonderful insights from all of the good characters that are in here as well. So we do reading breakfasts once a term, and parents are invited to read books for their children. So, so creating that reading community is lovely. So just quickly, Rachel, and is this chat transcript going to be available? Are you going to be able to sending this, or will someone
Yes.
moderate this? And you will send it. Okay.
We will send it afterwards along with the recording and the slides. Yeah.
Wonderful. So there you go. If you have missed anything, don't worry. There will be a transcript available. The links will be in there too. Which takes us on to topic 3, which is all about the benefits of shared reading now. Kiran, I'll come to you for this one. How to communicate the importance of shared reading to parents. And can I, just before you kick off, I'm going to have my lens on as a parent here, because I am an educator, but I also am a parent of 4 children. So I know that often the communication when it comes to reading is this scraggy little book that if it makes it home, reading journal, if it makes it home. And when it does come home, it's, the expectation is a signature. That's pretty much it, which can be done. Oh, I haven't signed your reading diary. I'll quickly sign it at breakfast time. Or it doesn't get done. And if it doesn't get done, is it really moderated? So this isn't a personal attack at schools. It's just about the value of things like this and how you feel there might be more impactful ways of ensuring that we communicate to parents the importance of reading, or any inspiring ideas to really support this reading habit.
I think that element of the reading diary there, I think for some schools it works, for some schools it doesn't. I think again, it comes with the caveat that your families. I think when you're thinking about ensuring that they understand the benefits of shared reading, you have to get them in, you have to invite them in and say, this is what we do. So as part of our work that we're doing around reading for pleasure and just reading, the message that always gets through to parents, like we had 100 parents come to our last workshop, which just says a lot about the fact that that wasn't something that ever happened before in our school community. Because we don't necessarily, phonics is important because it's part and parcel of how to read, but it's not why you're reading. No one goes to school to learn phonics necessarily because they know it's something that they need to do. It's part and parcel of learning to read. So we invite parents in, and the first reading for pleasure workshop we did, and it was about sort of diverse books. So we had them out on the tables, we had them out in the hall, and it was really relaxed. And the idea being that volitional reading starts with you. It starts with you understanding your children and what they're interested in. We've got some books here that are favourites of the children. Have a read with them. And it was literally just that. Just sit and read with your children. If you want to have a conversation about what else we do for reading, please come. That then opens up the conversations about how to read and learning to read. So then we've done phonics workshops, which again have become more popular over time. And we've also done workshops where we specifically look at author in residence. So we've got an author in residence at the moment at the school, and he's done lots of story writing workshops with the children, looking specifically at vocabulary. The biggest one that we've done that I'm really, really proud of is we have 44 different languages within our school, but I think after the workshop, I think there's more than that, where they had written stories in their home languages because we wanted to elevate their home languages up to where English is. So we have like stories written in Farsi, in new languages that I'd never heard of before. So it's about learning about our community. And we had Pam McMillan and Alex Price come in for our World Book Day, where we then did a story writing workshop with her and Acorn Wood. And we had about 130 families come to that because they felt seen, they felt represented. The fact that we were asking about their home languages and getting them to the children reading their home languages and recording them, and then that dual language and that dual heritage, they then read it in English. That I think is what's helped to sort of develop our reading for pleasure culture, because the children feel seen and the families feel seen. And it's, when we're talking about books, it's about that lived experience of others. And I think it's so powerful when the families are coming in and sharing their lived experiences of when they learned to read. So that's been a real positive. The other thing that we're doing based on, so it's inspired by BookTrust research on the generational reading cycle and the gaps that can form there, is we're starting our Bambinos and Books Club tomorrow. So we've got the amazing Laura Henry Allen coming in, who, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think she's one of the only authors that has written about kinship families, which again, when you think about the context that we're living in now, there are many more kinship families than there were 10 years ago. So I go back to my point, childhood is very different now. So it's a very intentional author visit with Laura, and we're going to just model, not in a patronising way, I don't think it's ever patronising, but the mums and the dads that are already there with children who have got toddlers, we're inviting those families in tomorrow morning. We're giving out free books, we're giving out teddies, and just nurturing that understanding of shared reading is important to us because it's important for your baby's development, it's important for your development as a family, getting to know each other, that shared time. So Laura's going to do a modelled shared reading session, I'll do a modelled shared reading session, and then again we'll share some of the research, we'll share like the Ladybird work that she's done as well, and show them developmentally this is where your children might be. If they're not, this is what you could do. And it's almost like a workshop, but the idea being that we always, any school that I've worked in, we always invite the families in to see what we're saying when we're talking about reading for pleasure, because it's stick to beat families with that reading diary isn't going to get done by certain families because they have got too much going on at home. And when you look at it from a human lens, and it can be very easy to judge, well, it wasn't done. But then again, I'll go back to the point, if you know your families well, you will understand why that reading diary hasn't been done. I intentionally have invited 5 families, 5 mums specifically to come to this because actually it's going to be good for their well-being, just to be around other mums, other toddlers, and see developmentally where their children are in comparison to others. When you have transition mornings as well, and you're inviting reception parents in, be really intentional about the fact that with September last that's just gone, there were certain children with need, and we intentionally invited those mums together to come to the morning session so that they could see their child isn't the only one, that they're not alone, that there is going to be a community there to support them. So we always invite parents in. And when you are giving the reading diary home, and it's something that I've always spoken to teachers about, is model what it is that you want the families to do yourself. I want the children to enjoy those books with me. Whenever they're listening to me read, or I'm reading to them, or they're reading to me, my comments in the reading diary are never about the skill. They're never about anything like that. It's about whether they enjoyed that character, whether they enjoyed that theme, was there a favourite word. So the reading diary is for us, and it has been a cultural shift where I'm telling the teachers it isn't always about the skill, because that will happen at school. We want to know the children as readers. So that book is a way for us to know the reader a bit more. It's not about beating parents with a stick to say whether you've not read with them or not, because we know family life is very difficult. So that reading diary, if we're using it, it's to learn more about the reader as in a human being and what they like, nothing more than that. But I think parents being invited to school, that's where you develop that reading for culture pleasure properly. And the Bambinos and books, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow and how that develops. I just can't wait. So,
Thank you for that, Kiran. I'm going to put a question to you, Becky, now.
yeah.
We have, no, not like that. As in, like, this is going to be a tough one. I don't know if you've got the answer to this one. You know, a bit of a challenge. So, in an ideal world, what Kiran is saying is amazing. You get those parents in, you educate them, you empower them. That's brilliant. We love that. We want to see that all the time. And if you're fortunate, Kiran, where you've created that culture, I'm sure you've done a lot of hard work in the background to kick that off and facilitate that. Becky, if you put on those reading mornings, you're gonna leave this tonight, and you're gonna say, right, to your head deputy, we're gonna start reading breakfast. We're gonna start this. We're gonna download these books on the BookTrust. We're gonna go on this, that, and the other. You put on the event, and 2 parents turn up.
Yeah.
How do we combat that problem? How do we get them involved? What do we need to do? I'm sure it's going to go back to Kieran's point about knowing your audience and knowing the parents. I'm sure it's going to end up there, but Becky, any insights would be very helpful.
Well, in practical terms, a lot of people work and aren't able to at school. I mean, I think it's just a brilliant idea. Those you can get in, fantastic. Those you can't, I would give them simple ideas for things to do. Reading doesn't have to be a fiction book that they spend half an hour over. It can be that the child sits with you as you make a shopping list and has a go at reading it through. It can be that you do a recipe together and they read out a few things on the recipe. It could be that you're in the car on the way to school and listen to an audio book together, so they start to love stories. There are many, many ways to get kids reading rather than just a traditional way. And I think if we give parents ideas, whether we send that home on sheet, we give the child a book bingo that they've got to complete, we even send them some activities home that they'll need to do with their parent, but maybe involves a little bit of reading to get the instructions. just getting that time together where words are involved, I think is really useful. So sometimes parents just need a little bit of direction and a few ideas so that are simple and accessible.
I love the ideas there. I mean, I'm an ideas man, so you've just really inspired me with some of those recipes. I was thinking maybe you put on a cooking morning at school, for example, which would be so lovely because I'm sure they'd come in to cook with their kids, and you get they might be making rock cakes, something really simple. But
Reading
if
those
you're,
recipes,
yeah,
doing
if
the
you're
shop
encouraging the
notes,
kids
right?
to read, that would be
Reading
amazing.
and writing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking when when I was a teacher full time, what if I heard that advice, I'd be like, maybe we could do a whole school treasure hunt where they're given clues on a piece of paper. They're involved in the making of the maps, for example, becomes a whole curriculum thing. You look at geography, you look at all of that, you put it together, and then they go off on this amazing treasure hunt around the school with these clues that the kids have to read to access. So I really, really like those sort of points there. So thank you so much for sharing
I
that.
don't think it just has to be parents. A local school to me on World Book Day sent the kids out to an old people's home nearby, and the children read to the elderly people in the home, and they absolutely had a blast with it. And then they were asked questions about the books. There's lots of different ways to get grandparents involved, get siblings involved.
Yeah.
So a question for a child might be, ask your sibling what their favorite book is and get them to share it with you. Anything that gets reading to be exciting. When Kiran was talking about her breakfast club, you could see the enthusiasm coming up, and we want kids to feel that enthusiasm. So just give them little challenges to do like that. Ask your grandparent what was their favorite book when they were a kid.
Yeah.
Get reading a really exciting subject, I think.
Yeah, and you grow that community. I've just seen a point here from Jenny who says we know children learn from what they see and often copy
Yeah.
it. So it says we're working with local cafes to set up silent book clubs, which aren't that silent, where books can be shared and enjoyed, which is a lovely thing. I mean, my wife isn't a reader like me, but she still gets caught reading by my kids, even if she's not. She make sure that she's caught reading. She might have something hidden behind the book. Do you know what I mean? It might be a shot, whatever it is. But I think kids, you're so right, do what they see.
Yeah,
We really need to model this ourselves as parents, as practitioners. So even like giving parents some tips around that area, I think would be quite empowering but also look at how many of us are together right now collaboratively online in all different spaces and places in the country or wherever we are. We're still doing something inspiring right now and empowering and educational for so many people. So maybe taking some of those book looks online, some recommendations. So for those parents that can't get in and are working or just can't make it in, you could also do it online as well. So you're probably doing this already, but it's just also consider the power of these virtual meets as well. So yeah, some amazing points there. I think we need to now really move into our sort of final topic area, which is more about the book trust. But before we do that, Kiran, Becky, any burning things that you feel like I should have said that, I need to say that, I need to say this today that I haven't said it and I want to say it right now, please fire away. I'll start with you, Becky, if you've got anything else to add to this amazing conversation.
I think I just want to add, because we're in such a I can never say that word, digitally connected world, and we can't avoid it. We can't. It is going to be there for young people. They do need to disconnect. They do. And it's really, really good if parents can be encouraged to manage that, but giving them exciting other options. So, hey, we're going to have reading time now, or we're going to do this. So it becomes a habit, because I've got teens myself. It's very hard to get them off their phones, even if they were big readers, and we need to be very aware of that. They have to have some time away. So, going out for a picnic, taking a few books with you, anything that gets them away from screens is so beneficial for their well-being. Their brains need to calm down, so yeah. I would absolutely encourage parents to think about that now before they get those phones.
Yes. And Kiran?
I think the one thing that I will say is don't assume that every parent and every family would have had the same early reading experiences as you and like within your community. I think I was very lucky, and I think we were probably very, in terms of like how we were brought up with books. And I think going back to the generational reading cycles research, not every family has that reading cycle. There are different reading cycles that will come into your school, in your classroom, and to be aware of that. And how are you going to bridge that gap? Because if we're thinking about accessibility and equity, they don't start off at an equitable point. So it's being really, really mindful of the fact that not every family is going to start with the assumed or what you'd want them to come from in terms of a reading background, and how are you going to bridge that gap. So that's why it is essential to build that relationship with families, so that they're not scared. They're not scared of getting it wrong. They're not scared of doing something wrong that's going to stop their child from doing better. Because no parent I've ever met wants to let their child down. I think they're just scared that they might. And it's opening up that environment so that they feel safe as well to ask those questions. I think it's a privilege when you have parents say to you, oh, I'm dyslexic and I'm seeing this in my child, or I struggled when I was young. What do you suggest? That's when you know you've cracked the reading culture, to be honest, because it's the hard to reach families that you need to reach first, because that's why the gaps build. So I just say, don't assume that everyone has had the same reading experience as you.
I think taking on all of your advice right from the beginning, from Fiona to Kiran to Becky, is the one thing that's really resonating with me is this word awareness. Being aware of your cohort of children, being aware of the parents, and just, I think, the connecting with them through these outreach ideas, whether it's in a care home, whether it's a reading morning, a breakfast, knowing their interests and their books. It's all about building this community and this trust between you, but you have to know them. It's very clear here that you have to know who they are to really support them. And also accepting, like you just said, Kieran, that it's okay to not know. Do you know what I mean? As a parent, like, I mean, when I became a parent for the first time, you just suddenly get this kid, and like you go home and you're like, what? I'm going to be a father now and just know what I'm doing. Like, how does that work? There's no instruction manual. Like when you go to other places like IKEA, you buy something, you get instructions. This, I'm just meant to be a good dad, you know, and I'm meant to do this, and you're learning on. And I think it's the same thing for parents when a kid comes back from school with some work, and they don't know, they're not at the forefront of research, they're not in tune to what we're doing really at school. They're there for a long time, and that duty of care as a teacher and educator just shows you how important that is. That time spent with us, we are pretty much their primary role model for a good 7 years of their primary education and then their secondary, and how amazing a job that is to have, you know, to have that influence and that inspiration and that privilege really to support change and, you know, really guide children's lives is amazing. And to the 263 participants in this room right now, you know, big up you lot, because you're smashing it, you're changing lives every single day. So amazing, well done, legends, all of you. Speaking of legends, we're now going to speak to Rachel now from the BookTrust. And Rachel, you're going to talk to us about how we can be supported by the BookTrust, a reminder of the relevant books and general resources on topic of wellbeing, and how all of the wonderful work you're doing. So please tell us.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I'm going to go back to your word, awareness. So we're aware that you teachers are the role models and are the intermediaries really between sort of us and the children. And so we are very aware also that you are really time poor. You've got so much on your plate. So we are sort of here to try and help and try and provide lots of information to guide you in possibly, you know, guiding the children into books they might enjoy. So as well as the slides from today, which you will get in an email, we also have a PDF which you can download from the web. So the page is booktrust.org.uk/for-primary, which we will show you at the end, and we'll share it as well in the email after this. But there is a downloadable PDF which goes into slightly more detail than Fiona was able to today about the wellbeing benefits of reading. So you can then share that with your colleagues, you can share that with your community of parents and carers. There are a couple of book recommendations in there. And we did this collaborated with Place to Be, as mentioned earlier, the children's mental health charity, and they have written a foreword for us, which was fabulous. So we have that available to share at any time. We also have written an assembly for you on reading and wellbeing, with some videos of Michael Rosen in it. So he has been, just as you can imagine, fabulous, just sitting talking about how useful books can be and how great they are for empathy and identifying with different characters and so on. So this is an assembly very much aimed at primary schools, and Michael talks to the children directly in the videos. So do use that. That's available to download as well. We've also created for you to use some little banners for your newsletters to your community, or any social media that you do. Hopefully you can use our assets with kind of information. They're like mini little stats, I believe, bite-sized kind of info about reading and wellbeing to kind of encourage your communities to do so. And so that's very specifically the things we have on reading and wellbeing on offer. And then we also have in general on the website, so I am encouraging you guys to look at the screen in this instance, I'm afraid, are the various book lists, some of which have been put in the chat, but you can just search for any topic on a book list. If we don't have it, please let us know and we will create one. And so lots of book lists on various different topics. We have the Great Books Guide, which comes out every year, every October, which hopefully you guys all have a physical copy of, because we send a physical copy to every school in England and to certain hubs in Wales and Northern Ireland. And that's the 100 best books of the last year. So we'll be doing a new one this coming October, but obviously this academic year's one is still relevant. We have lots of articles on our website, and you'll see it if you follow us on social media, across all different kinds of book-related themes, and hopefully they're super useful, and they include authors sometimes recommending their top 5 books, for instance, on certain things. But with relevance to this, we have books about feelings, book lists on helping your child feel more calm and so on. So there's lots and lots of resources on the website. So please do look at it. Please do, as I say, contact us if there's anything else you feel could be useful. And the final thing to say is, as a possible fun community reading experience, we have a fundraising, fundraising day, which is on the 22nd of May. You don't have to do it actually on that day if you don't want to, but we suggest that that's the day to do it, where you get children to come in their pajamas and pay £1 if they can do so, which goes to BookTrust, and read in their pajamas, which is super fun. So do look at that. If you don't get a chance to scan this QR code, we'll send out more information in the email. Don't worry about that. But that is a really lovely way, an excuse really, to all read together and have fun across the school, really, from the very littlies to the incredibly sophisticated year 6s. So yeah, there we go. There's a link to sign up in the chat. Thank you. So that's probably a whistle-stop tour of how BookTrust can help support you. But please do look at the website and contact us.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Lots of useful links. I've been looking through the chat if there are any questions. Talk about how can we get any great books. We've got one here. How do I get a copy of Great Books Guide? I'm in England, but have not received one at my school. We will put all this out, I'm assuming, post chat.
Also, the Great Books Guide, the digital version, is on the website. So have a look on the website. It's just we also send the physical copy. But sorry you didn't get yours. Apologies.
It also says, any chance of getting the list of the 100 best books of last year in Scotland?
Yeah, so we absolutely can download it from the website. We just don't send to Scotland because we are BookTrust, and then there is Scottish BookTrust as well, and which is just covers Scotland. So we are friendly with Scottish BookTrust, obviously, but we don't kind of send to Scottish schools as well. But you can absolutely download it from our website.
Wonderful. I think that's pretty much all of the questions to get through at the moment. Oh, is there a similar assembly for secondary school for our practitioners that work in secondary school?
There isn't at the moment, but do have a look at this one and see if it might be applicable, certainly for year 7 and 8. They might still get a lot from it. But we have noted that. And of course, we have, excuse me, just going to cough, a book buzz. We have a programme called Book Buzz aimed specifically at years 7 and 8. And there are definitely, there's lots of information on that might be helpful, although not specifically an assembly, but there are author videos and so on that you might want to use, perhaps in a secondary school on there. So have a look.
And there we go. I think we come to the end. We don't have time for a wrap. Do we have time for a wrap?
We always have time for a wrap. Please do a quick wrap for
All
us.
right, we'll just do a quick wrap. I'm going to wrap. The reason I'm going to wrap the Gruffalo is because for me personally, it's everything which books are about, right? I wrapped the Gruffalo to my daughter on a couch in my house. Within a week, I was in LA on the Ellen Show. I came off the Ellen Show, signed a TV deal, record deal, and now I moonlight around the country as a rapper all over the world as well.
Fabulous.
Just to show you that books can significantly change your life. So I love sharing this book because it has two stories, right? It has the story obviously about the defiant mouse and the very brave mouse, but also has a story about how books can change your life. And actually, that's the truth. I'm walking proof of that. Yeah. So it might not be a book about the Gruffalo for sure. It might be about a book about cakes. You become a baker. It might just be a book you need on a rainy day. Whatever it is, I'm trying to say to you that books always be there. So hopefully I can share this now. Let me see if this is going to work. This is well the tech. Oh, I can't share sound. Why is that? Won't let me share sound. So sadly, I don't think I can wrap it. Let me try it. Hold
We're
on.
trying to change that. 1 second. The host is attempting to change.
If you make me a host, maybe it might let me share sound. I'm running out of time here. Not yet. Hold on. Let's try it. You let me know when it's changed, host.
Yes, you are a host now.
All right, let's try it. Let's try
Someone's
it.
suggesting a cappella.
I can do it. I mean, it's not as fun, but hold on. Let's see.
Becky, can you beatbox?
Let's try. Hold on 1 sec. You can't. Can you hear this sound? Am I playing it now? Can anyone hear that? Can you hear me rapping as well? Yeah. All right, you ready? Here we go. The Gruffalo. A mouse took a stroll through the deep dark wood. A fox saw the mouse looked good. Where you going to, little brown mouse? Come and have lunch in my underground house. It's to be kind of you, fox, but no. I'm gonna have lunch with a Gruffalo. Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why didn't you know? He has terrible tusks and terrible claws and terrible teeth in his terrible jaws. Where are you meeting him? Here by the rocks, and his favourite food is roasted fox. Roasted fox? I'm on, fox said. Goodbye, little mouse, and away he sped. Silly old fox, doesn't he know there's no such thing as the Gruffalo? On went the mouse of the deep dark wood, and out saw the mouse looked good. Where you going to, little brown mouse? Come and have tea in my treetop house. It's frightfully nice of you, owl, but no, I'm gonna have tea with a Gruffalo. A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why didn't you know he has knobbly knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose? Where are you meeting him? Here by the stream, and his favourite food is owl ice cream. Owl ice cream to wit to woo. Goodbye, little mouse, and away owl flew. Silly old owl, doesn't he know there's no such thing as a Gruffalo? And there you go. You've had a look. Now go and read the book.
Amazing.
Fabulous.
Thank you, everybody. I had fun doing that. And yeah, I hope you had a great time on this wonderful virtual meet brought to you by the legends at BookTrust and, of course, Place to Be with the research. Thank you very much to Fiona, Kiran, Becky, and, of course, Rachel. I hope you all had a wonderful time. And yeah, keep reading and rapping. There it is.
Thank you so much, MC Hammer. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And do check out our other webinars. Yes. Goodbye. Thank you.